You're a jealous loser. Stay away from Christmas. My family mocked me, praised the golden boy, and disinvited me. They didn't know I was the one paying for everything. Until I canceled it all. The moment I turned my car around on that freezing December night, I knew something inside me had snapped for good. I didn't speed. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry anymore. Just empty. The kind of emptiness you only reach after years, decades, really, of trying, giving, breaking yourself into pieces for people who never once bothered to look close enough to see you bleeding. All I could think as I drove away was, let it all burn. Let them see what happens without me. They wouldn't understand at first. They never did. But when Christmas morning came, and they stood there shivering in the dark, clutching at broken promises and empty expectations, maybe then, just maybe, they'd realize. Or maybe not. Honestly, by then, I didn't care anymore. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, I never would have imagined it coming to this. Back then, I was still trying to earn a place at the table. Still trying to be the good son, the reliable brother, the invisible backbone of every family celebration. I'm 30 now, but sometimes when I think about my family, I still feel like that awkward kid at the birthday party no one remembered to invite friends to. Meanwhile, my younger brother, Jake, floated through life on a cloud of blind praise. 2 years younger than me, but somehow always better, at least in my parents' eyes. Jake was the golden child, the miracle baby who could do no wrong. Me? I was the scapegoat. The punching bag for every frustration, the easy blame for anything that ever went sideways. It was like I was born holding the short end of the stick, and nobody ever thought twice about it. You'd think growing up like that would harden me, maybe make me cold, selfish, bitter. But instead, and maybe this was my biggest flaw, it made me softer. All I ever wanted was to belong. So, I bent over backwards trying to make myself useful, to be the one holding things together, even if nobody thanked me for it. When I finally got a decent job in my late 20s, it felt like maybe, just maybe, things could change. I wasn't rich by any stretch, but I made enough to start giving back in ways they would actually notice. Or so I thought. That's how the Christmases started. Not the holiday itself, obviously, but the real work behind the scenes. The money, the planning, the effort no one ever saw. Every year, I'd rent a gorgeous cabin upstate, not just a random rental, but a proper, storybook Christmas getaway, complete with snowy woods and fireplaces you could roast marshmallows in. I'd hire a catering company for a full Christmas feast. No supermarket rotisserie chicken here. I'm talking prime rib, glazed ham, vegan options for my cousin's latest diet phase, the works. A team of decorators would go up early and string the place with thousands of twinkling lights, fresh wreaths, hand-painted ornaments. And the gifts. Oh, the gifts. Every single person got something thoughtful, something personal. A new fishing rod for Dad. A rare vintage cookbook for Mom. A custom leather wallet for Jake, embossed with his initials, even though he never said thanks. But nobody knew it was me. They all thought it was Jake. I never corrected them. See, Jake was broke. Always had been. But pride is a hell of a drug, and he played along with the idea that he was the generous one footing the bill. My parents fawned over him, bragging to their friends about their successful, generous son. And Jake, being Jake, just smiled and let it happen. Maybe I should have been furious. Maybe I should have outed him the first year. But the thing is, I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because, deep down, I still thought that if I gave enough, cared enough, loved enough, maybe someday they'd finally see me. Maybe they'd finally love me back. It wasn't just Christmas, either. Over the years, I'd pick up dinner tabs without saying a word. Quietly cover emergency bills Jake forgot about. It wasn't about being a martyr. I just wanted to matter. Even if it was in the background. Even if nobody ever said thank you. Even if Jake got the credit. So when the group text came through on December 22nd, just 3 days before Christmas, it knocked the air out of my lungs. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. A prank, maybe. Some sick joke. The message was from Dad. Short, blunt, cruel. You're not welcome. You're a jealous loser. Stay away from our family this Christmas. No explanation. No build-up. Just a gut punch out of nowhere. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. And the crazy part? Nobody else in the group chat, not Jake, not Mom, not any of the cousins, said a damn thing. No one defended me. No one asked what was going on. No one even sent a confused emoji. It was like they all already agreed. It was like I was already gone. I sat there for a long time, just staring at my phone, feeling like the walls around me were shrinking. I thought about the rental cabin I'd paid for, the deposit non-refundable, the balance due tomorrow. The catering team booked for 2 days straight. The hundreds of wrapped gifts stacked in my guest room, each one labeled with the stupid, meaningless "from Jake and family" tag I'd printed out. The decorators set to arrive that night with armfuls of garlands and poinsettias. The outdoor heaters and sound system rentals. The sleigh ride deposit for Christmas Eve. All of it. Thousands of dollars. Months of planning. And for what? So they could spit in my face and call me a loser? Something inside me crystallized in that moment. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. They would get exactly what they thought they deserved. Nothing more, nothing less. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't rage or break things either, the way you'd think someone would after getting gut punched by their own family. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the pile of Christmas cards I had been planning to hand out. Handwritten, heartfelt notes, each one talking about how grateful I was for my loving family. The irony was so thick it was almost funny. Almost. At around 2 a.m., I stood up, pushed the cards into the trash, and booted up my laptop. The rental cabin? Canceled. Lost the deposit, sure, but that was the least of it. The caterers? I sent a polite email thanking them for their time and canceling the feast. The decorators? Same thing, canceled, with a hefty fee I didn't care about anymore. The outdoor heaters, the sleigh ride, the lights, the hand-delivered gingerbread houses, gone, every single piece. I even called the local power company and, in the most matter-of-fact voice I could muster, arranged for the cabin's electricity to be disconnected by December 24th. It was almost disturbingly easy, like flicking switches off, one after another. Each cancellation felt like stripping away a lie I'd been living under for years. The gifts were the last thing I dealt with. I stood there for a while in front of the mountain of wrapping paper and bows, feeling strangely detached. Then I began unwrapping each package one by one. Not in anger, methodically, like performing surgery. Once all the fancy paper and ribbons were gone, I boxed the gifts up, the fishing rod, the cookbook, the wallets, the luxury scarves, the tech gadgets, everything I had so painstakingly picked out. I loaded it all into my car, and the next morning, I donated every single item to a local shelter. The staff there were overwhelmed and thanked me profusely, clearly thinking I was some kind of Christmas angel. I didn't tell them the truth. It was enough that the gifts would actually be appreciated somewhere. Driving away from the shelter, my car empty for the first time in weeks, I felt lighter than I had in years. Like someone had unclamped a weight from my chest. I didn't text anyone in the family. I didn't explain. I didn't warn them. I just let it happen. On Christmas Eve, I stayed home. No frantic packing. No double-checking guest lists. No last-minute crises to solve for people who never even knew who was solving them. Instead, I made myself a simple dinner, take-out Thai food, and watched bad Christmas movies in my sweatpants. There was a moment, maybe around 11 p.m., when I felt the tug of habit. That ingrained urge to fix things, to make sure everything was perfect for them. I wondered if anyone had thought to double-check the rental confirmation. If anyone had noticed there was no heat, no food, no decorations. I wondered if Jake was still parading around, pretending he was the hero behind it all. And then, for the first time in my life, I genuinely, truly didn't care. But then my phone buzzed. It was a text from my cousin Sarah, one of the few family members who never fully bought into the golden child narrative. We weren't close exactly, but she had always been. Neutral, at least. The message just said, "Holy crap. What happened? Everything's a mess." Curious, I asked her what she meant. What she sent back made me laugh out loud, a real, ugly, unexpected bark of laughter that I hadn't heard from myself in months. Apparently, things had gone to hell almost immediately. The family had arrived at the cabin around noon, expecting a warm, cozy welcome, hot cocoa in hand, twinkling lights everywhere, the smell of cinnamon and roast beef in the air. Instead, they stepped into a frozen tomb. The power had been shut off. No lights, no heat, no music. It was so cold inside that you could see your breath in the air. The tree stood there, bare and drooping, like some sad prop from a ghost town. There were no presents underneath. No food in the kitchen. No catering staff bustling around. Just silence. And cold. And confusion. At first, Sarah said, people tried to play it cool. Jake, sweating bullets, started rambling about how maybe the rental company screwed up, or there must have been some mistake. But the longer they stood there, shivering, the angrier people got. Dad stormed around, yelling about calling the property manager. Mom sat down on a freezing wooden bench and started crying, right there in the middle of the empty room. The cousins complained loudly about wasting the drive. The little kids, bundled in 2 light coats, started whining about being hungry. Somebody tried flipping random light switches like that was going to magically fix it. Another person checked the kitchen, only to find empty counters and a fridge that was completely unplugged. Within half an hour, half the family had left in a huff, slamming car doors and muttering about never doing Christmas like this again. And Jake? Apparently, Jake was standing in the corner, pale as a ghost, trying and failing to come up with an excuse for why the incredible Christmas he had planned had turned into a total dumpster fire. It didn't take long for people to start asking questions. Where were the gifts? Where was the food? Why hadn't anyone confirmed the rental details? Sarah said it was almost satisfying to watch the realization dawn across the room. One by one, the gears turning in their heads as they started piecing things together. How maybe, just maybe, it hadn't been Jake making Christmas happen all these years. Maybe it had been someone else. Someone they hadn't even bothered to invite this time. That's when the call started. First it was Dad, then Mom, then Jake, blowing up my phone with message after message. At first, I ignored them. But out of curiosity, I glanced at one or two. Not a single one said sorry. Not a single one asked if I was okay. No, they were furious. How dare I ruin Christmas? How could I be so petty? How could I humiliate them like this in front of the whole extended family? Mom's message was the worst, dripping with guilt trips about how this was supposed to be a time for family unity and how disappointed she was that I would throw a tantrum just to hurt them. It was almost funny how blind they were to the truth. I hadn't ruined anything. They had. They threw me away like garbage. They told me, in no uncertain terms, that I wasn't welcome. All I had done was take my gifts, my effort, my money, my time, my love, and given it to people who would actually appreciate it. They got exactly what they asked for. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. Not even a little bit. You would think, after everything, that I would have turned my phone off and enjoyed my peaceful Christmas alone. But a small, stubborn part of me couldn't resist checking in, watching from a distance as the house of cards I had spent years holding up finally collapsed under its own weight. The messages kept coming in waves. Apparently, once enough people realized that Jake wasn't going to magically produce food or presents or heating, the finger-pointing started. Dad went ballistic first. From what Sarah said, he didn't even try to hide it. He outright screamed at Jake in front of everyone, demanding to know how he could let this happen. Mom wasn't much better. She alternated between sobbing into her hands and snapping at Jake about how he had promised everything would be perfect. It got worse when the property manager showed up after a barrage of angry calls. Sarah said the guy looked bewildered, like he had no idea why he was being summoned on Christmas Day. He calmly explained, in front of the entire family, that the reservation had been canceled days ago. Non-payment. Client request. Everyone heard it. There was no hiding now. No blaming the cabin company. No spinning it as some outside mistake. That's when the real panic set in. With no place to stay and no food to serve, the family scattered. The cousins with young kids left immediately, muttering curses under their breath about never trusting Jake again. A few of the aunts and uncles tried to salvage it, suggesting going back to someone's house, ordering takeout, but the damage was done. The illusion was shattered. The whispers started before the cars even pulled out of the icy driveway. Had Jake ever paid for Christmas in the past? Had he even organized anything? Wasn't it weird how he never seemed to know the details? Sarah told me that by the time the last stragglers gave up and left, Jake was a wreck. He kept insisting that he had paid, that it wasn't his fault, that something must have gone wrong. But nobody was buying it anymore. The golden child's shine had finally started to dull. Meanwhile, back on my end, the angry texts from my parents kept escalating. Dad accused me of deliberately humiliating the family. Mom guilt-tripped me about ruining Christmas for the children. Jake, for his part, sent me a pitiful string of messages trying to save face, talking about how this wasn't fair and how I made him look bad on purpose. They hadn't kicked me out of Christmas because they thought I was petty or lazy or selfish. They had kicked me out because deep down, they needed a scapegoat. Someone to blame when things didn't go perfectly. Someone to carry the weight of their unrealistic expectations so they could pretend everything was fine. Without me there, the cracks became visible. The facade crumbled. And they hated it. They hated me for making them look in the mirror and see what was really there. A family built on favoritism, lies, and hollow pride. Later that evening, Sarah called me, an actual phone call, not just texts. Sarah didn't even bother with pleasantries. She just said, in the most exhausted voice I've ever heard, that Christmas had been an absolute dumpster fire. That half the family was furious at Jake. That my parents were desperately trying to spin a story about how I had sabotaged the holiday out of jealousy. Apparently, Dad was going around telling anyone who would listen that I must have hacked the cabin company's system or tampered with the bookings. Mom was crying to anyone who would pity her, claiming I had been holding Christmas hostage all these years without them realizing it. Sarah told me, and I could hear the disbelief in her voice, that it was like watching a cult lose their prophet. For the first time, people were actually questioning the narrative, actually wondering if maybe, just maybe, they'd been backing the wrong horse all along. I asked Sarah why she was telling me all this. She said because I deserved to know. Because, even though she hadn't done much over the years, she saw what was happening now and knew it wasn't right. I thanked her. We didn't say much else. There wasn't much more to say. When the call ended, I sat there in silence for a long time. For the first time in my life, I realized something important. I didn't have to keep trying. I didn't have to keep hoping they'd change. I didn't have to keep setting myself on fire to keep people warm who wouldn't even notice I was burning. I had let them go, and it was the best gift I could have ever given myself. I wish I could say that after Christmas Day, the calls and messages stopped, that they accepted what happened and moved on, leaving me in peace. But that's not how people like them operate. Not when they're faced with the collapse of the carefully crafted story they've clung to for years. The next few days were a barrage. First came the angry messages. Dad demanding that I apologize for embarrassing the family. Mom telling me I had ruined Christmas for the entire bloodline, as if I was personally responsible for a multi-generational catastrophe. Jake's texts were the most pathetic. He tried to guilt-trip me, claiming he was begging me to fix things, to clear up the misunderstanding, so that people would stop turning on him. I didn't respond. Not once. For the first time in my life, I gave them nothing. By New Year's Eve, the tone shifted. The anger cooled into something more desperate. My mother sent a long, rambling message about how family is all we have in this world, and blood is thicker than water. She begged me to come to a family meeting, some kind of intervention, I guess, to re-establish control. My father chimed in a few hours later with a message that was equal parts threat and plea. He said that no matter what I thought of them, family ties couldn't be broken, and that I was too old to be acting like a rebellious child. Too old to stop being their punching bag? If anything, I was decades too late. The final straw came 3 days into the new year. Sarah, again, the only one I halfway trusted, forwarded me a group text from some of the cousins. In it, Dad had laid out his version of the story. That I had sabotaged Christmas out of deep-seated jealousy. That I had always been bitter and resentful of Jake's natural gifts. That I had conned the family for years into thinking I cared, only to betray them when it mattered most. It was disgusting. It was infuriating. And most of all, it was pitiful. They couldn't accept the truth. They couldn't accept that they had driven me away, piece by piece, over a lifetime of favoritism and neglect. No, in their minds, they had to twist it into yet another story where I was the villain, the scapegoat, the role they'd forced me into since before I even knew how to speak. That night, I made my decision. I blocked every single one of them. My father, my mother, Jake, all the cousins, aunts, uncles, second cousins twice removed, anyone even remotely tied to that toxic web. I didn't send a goodbye message. I didn't explain. I didn't warn them. I just erased them from my life, like clearing mold out of a house that deserved better. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was clean, final, freeing. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No buzzing phone. No guilt-soaked texts. No accusations waiting in my notifications. Just peace. It was strange at first, like standing in a room where the walls had always been closing in, and suddenly realizing you could breathe freely. I made breakfast, real breakfast, not just coffee and dry cereal, and sat by my window watching the early winter sun climb higher into the sky. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells. Didn't feel like I had to perform, or prove, or chase love that was never going to be given freely. Some people might say I was too harsh. That family is family, no matter what. That you should forgive, forget, move on. I forgave them for being who they were, for not being capable of the love I needed, for building a house on a foundation of lies and favoritism, and then blaming me when the walls collapsed. I forgave them, but I didn't forget, and I sure as hell didn't go back. It's been months now. The holidays came and went without a word from anyone. My birthday passed quietly, just the way I like it. Spring crept in with its promises of new beginnings, and for once, I actually believed it. I don't know what my family says about me these days. Maybe they still spin stories about the ungrateful son who turned his back on them. Maybe they don't talk about me at all. It doesn't matter. And for the first time in my life, I'm not carrying the weight of people who never deserve to be carried. And that is the best Christmas gift I could have ever given myself.